You know, could a single sentence really change the world? It sounds like an exaggeration, right? But in the long, drawn-out war against organized crime, one sentence did exactly that. And no, it wasn't some famous battle cry or a political slogan. It was a line, kind of buried in a Supreme Court decision, that gave law enforcement the ultimate weapon to finally cripple the mob. So let's break it down.
And here it is. This is the sentence from a 1981 court case, United States versus Turkette. I know, it looks like dense, super dry legal speak. But don't let that fool you for a second, because buried in these words is a revolutionary battle plan that completely rewired how the fight against organized crime even works.
So, what is this sentence really saying? How did this piece of legal interpretation become one of the most powerful weapons ever used against the criminal underworld? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to solve together right now.
To really get why this was so revolutionary, we have to rewind a bit and look at how things were done before. This was the old way of fighting, and frankly, it was a losing battle. For decades, law enforcement was basically stuck playing a frustrating game. They'd spend months, sometimes years, building a case against some high-ranking mobster. And yeah, they'd finally get a conviction. But the second that person went to prison, the organization would just promote someone else to take their place. It was a classic whack-a-mole problem. You knock one down, another pops right back up, and the criminal machine just keeps on humming.
And this really shows you the strategic problem. The old way, it was all about targeting individuals for specific crimes. You remove the person, sure, but the impact was always temporary. The new idea, though, was to target the entire enterprise. The goal wasn't just to remove a person, it was to tear down the whole corrupt structure. We're talking systemic, long-term impact.
This massive strategic shift was all made possible thanks to one single court case, the story of the Turkette Enterprise. This was the case that literally changed everything.
So at the heart of the Turkette case was a really important legal question about a law called the RICO Act. Now, the RICO Act was designed to go after enterprises involved in racketeering. But did that mean only legit businesses that the mob had muscled in on? Or could a group that existed for no other reason than to commit crimes, could that also be called an enterprise? I mean, the whole future of the fight against the mob was hanging on the answer to that question.
And in 1981, the Supreme Court came back with its answer, a huge, resounding yes. An enterprise is an enterprise. Doesn't matter if it's legitimate or completely criminal. This was the legal green light prosecutors had been desperately waiting for. It officially unlocked the full, devastating power of the RICO Act against organized crime itself, not just its members one by one.
Okay, so with all that history in our back pocket, let's go back to our quote and look at it in a totally new light. We're finally ready to unpack its true meaning and see the new legal weapon it created.
Here it is again. Kinda hits different now, doesn't it? Once you understand that the entire criminal organization is the target, this sentence reads less like a dry legal opinion and more like a direct order. It's a declaration of war.
That first part points directly to the new target, their source of economic power. This just brilliantly lays out the new focus. We're not talking about fists or guns here. We're talking about the financial lifeblood of the organization, the money, the businesses, the real estate, the cars, every single thing that allows the criminal enterprise to function and to grow.
This defined a whole new philosophy of attack. The goal was no longer just to jail the criminals. It was to bankrupt the criminal business. You seize the assets their crimes paid for. You dismantle their entire financial structure from the ground up. You're not just playing whack-a-mole anymore. You're pulling the plug on the entire arcade machine.
You see, this wasn't just to win in a single case. It was a fundamental change in legal warfare. So let's explore the lasting legacy of this quote and the incredible strategy it created.
And the second half of the quote, the attack must take place on all available fronts, well, that laid out the playbook. It's a three-step process. First, investigators identify the economic engine of the criminal group, how they make their money. Second, prosecutors get to work legally linking all the criminal acts to that enterprise. And finally, they use asset forfeiture laws to seize everything of value, cutting the organization off at its financial knees. And get this, the power of this idea has gone totally global. The strategy of targeting the economic foundation, born from a 1981 case against the American mob, is now a cornerstone in the modern fight against international drug cartels, human trafficking rings, and even terrorist organizations. The logic is universal. If you can stop the money from flowing, you can cripple the group's ability to operate.
And that brings us to a final, really powerful question. This principle of attacking the economic engine behind a problem instead of just its symptoms is a complete game changer. So think about it. Beyond crime, where else in our society could we use this exact same strategy to tackle our most complex and deep-rooted problems? The possibilities are pretty fascinating to think about.